For what exactly? Or is it for spending your wealth on another woman while you let your wife and child suffer? Tell me why I should forgive you. Many years ago, in the commercial city of Aba, there lived a young and beautiful girl named Ifechuku. Ifechuku was the epitome of every man's dream. With her striking beauty, warm smile and resilient spirit, she stood out even in her humble surroundings. One day, at a friend's wedding, she met Obiora, and it didn't take long for his smooth words and sweet promises to win her heart. Obiora was a man of charm, tall, confident and intelligent, with an air of mystery about him. He introduced himself as a struggling businessman working tirelessly to build the future. Though his clothes were always neat, they were modest, and his stories of financial challenges painted him as a hardworking man trying to climb the ladder of success. Ifechukwu, being from a humble background herself, admired his determination and believed they could build something beautiful together. Their courtship was simple yet fulfilling. They would sit at roadside suya spots, sharing suya sticks while talking, sharing dreams about the future. My father would always say that it's best for a woman to be kept in the dark about her husband's earnings. Don't tell her everything. Once she knows your true worth, she'll drain your finances dry, he said, turning to Ifechukwu. Ifechukwu laughed. She didn't quite agree with what Obiora had said, but blinded by her love for him, she would nod along, her affections overlooking his narrow views. When they got married, they moved into a 3-bedroom apartment in Umojima. The apartment barely had anything in it, but Ifechukwu, coming from a modest background herself, didn't complain. She fully embraced the idea of starting small and believed that when things get rosy, everything will get better. Obiora's business seemed to bring in just enough to cover their needs, or so she thought. After a few months, Ifechukwu started noticing something awkward about her husband. He had initially told her not to work, so that she would concentrate in their home. However, he barely brought enough to cover anything else. Once, when Ifechukwu pleaded that she wanted to have bread and tea for breakfast, he screamed, stating that such meals were for the elites. Do you know how much it costs to buy milk? Now, wow, Ifechukwu, we are in our building stage. When we become rich, we'll be able to afford these things. But for now, let's manage. Let's cut our clothes according to our cloth. A year later, Ifechukwu conceived and things went from bad to worse. Each demand was met with, let's save for our future. He began to ration everything in the house, from water to electricity, down to the food that they ate. He would always complain that his wife was being extravagant. Obiora, however, had secrets. Beneath the facade of a hardworking, struggling man lay a cunning manipulator unknown to Ifechukwu. Obiora was far from poor. He owned several booming wholesale electronic shops in Aba and even beyond. He also had a newly completed duplex in town. He managed to keep his wife in the dark by continuously telling her elaborate tales about working for his uncle who paid him a very little income and how he hoped that one day things will turn around. Ifechukwu's trust in her husband was unwavering. Even when he began rationing things like electricity and food in the house, she believed it was all part of the sacrifice for a better future. We have to save, he would say. I'm working on a big deal that will change everything. She admired his supposed discipline and continued to live modestly. She would often trek to the market just to save on transport costs. Her only solace was the hope that one day her husband's dreams of a better and bigger future would materialize. But things only got worse. Obiora came home, his face squeezed in frown. Ife, we have to make some changes in this house. Our rent here will soon expire, and I've calculated it. If we use all of this money for rent, it will be a waste considering we are saving for a baby. I'm thinking of dividing the money. Take a part to look for a smaller apartment and then keep the rest for something else. There are a lot of things we need money for, he continued. Ifechukwu, the ever supportive wife, agreed, and soon they moved from a 3-bedroom flat to a cramped 1-bedroom flat. As the months went by, Ifechukwu's hope began to falter. She felt the weight of Obiora's neglect, but her love for him kept her going. She told herself things would improve once the baby arrived. Yet, deep in her heart, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Obiora soon began keeping late nights and soon stopped coming home regularly. And each time he was asked, he would say his uncle had sent him on a last-minute errand outside of town. In spite of all that, whenever he was around, he hardly gave enough money to run the house. He would always complain about Ifechukwu's mismanagement of resources, stating that she was extravagant. Ifechukwu couldn't do much at the time as she was heavily pregnant. As Ifechukwu's pregnancy progressed, so did the challenges that every expectant mother face. Yet, her journey was lonelier than she could have ever imagined. Obiora's support was lukewarm at best. While others pampered their pregnant wife, Obiora barely acknowledged her struggles. Obiora, I'm feeling really tired, Ifechukwu confessed one evening as they sat in their cramped one-room apartment. She leaned against the peeling wall, her hand resting protectively against her growing belly. Obiora barely looked up from his phone. It's normal, Ife. Pregnancy isn't easy. Just manage, eh? It's just for some time. Ifechukwu sighed, her heart heavy. She longed for the warmth and care she'd seen other women receive from their husbands, but Obiora seemed distant, preoccupied with things she couldn't name. As the months passed, Ifechukwu noticed how her husband's excuses grew more creative. When she asked for a small gas cylinder to make cooking easier, Obiora frowned and he shook his head. Do you know how much gas costs now? Please stick to kerosene, abeg. We need to save money for the baby. I can't say this enough, Ifechukwu. Ifechukwu didn't argue. He was right. Or at least she thought he was. But Obiora's money-saving excuses didn't apply to everyone. Unknown to Ifechukwu, Obiora had a mistress, Lucy, whom he spent money lavishly on. Lucy was living in luxury. Obiora had rented her an apartment which he decorated with modern furniture. He ensured her wardrobe was constantly updated with the latest styles and even hinted her he would be getting her a car on her birthday. Obi, she poured during one of her dinners in a high-end restaurant. I can't keep hopping on bikes and keke. It's getting embarrassing. Obiora chuckled. Patience, my dear. The car is coming. You know I always keep my promises. Lucy's laughter filled the air, carefree and confident. He had no idea of the sacrifices Ifechukwu was making for a husband who claimed to be struggling. Meanwhile, Ifechukwu's health began to falter. The long walks to the market, the lack of proper nutrition, and the stress of managing their tiny home with little resources were taking a toll on her. One evening, she mustered the courage to bring it up to Obiora. Obi, I think I need to see a doctor, she said softly. I've been feeling very weak and I'm worried about the baby. Obiora sighed heavily. Ifechukwu, doctor's call. Are you sick? Is it not just pregnancy, Biko? You know how doctors are. They don't come cheap. By the time they charge for registration and consultation, all the money we saved so far would have gone half. Abeg. Nothing will happen to our baby. Stop thinking negatively. Have faith. I will pray for you. You too be praying safe. Every time you be saying negative things, God will take care of the baby. Nothing will happen. But the turning point came during her 8 months of pregnancy. One of the nights, she overheard Obiora talking on the phone, his voice light and playful, nothing like the curt and serious man she had grown accustomed to. Don't worry, Lucy, he was saying, his voice low but distant. Don't worry, the car will be ready by next week. Ifechukwu froze, her heart pounding. Car? Dealer? Who was Lucy? She pressed her hand against the wall for support, trying to make sense of what he had just heard. Her instincts told her something was terribly wrong, but she pushed the thoughts aside. Perhaps he had misheard. She decided to visit Obiora's shop. She rarely went there believing the stories of his strict uncle and the challenges of working in the shop, but this time she felt the need to see things for herself. When she arrived, she found Obiora sitting behind the counter, laughing with a group of men. There was no sign of stress or frustration he often talked about. The shop was well stocked, bustling with customers and clearly thriving. Ifechukwu, Obiora exclaimed, startled by her presence. What are you doing here? I just wanted to see you, she stammered, her eyes scanning the shop. Well, you've seen me, he said, his tone sharp. Now go home. This place is no place for a pregnant woman. I don't want this man thinking I'm doing honeymoon in this shop. Please leave now. Ifechukwu left, her heart heavy with questions. Something was wrong, but she didn't know how to uncover the truth. As she walked home under the scorching sun, she felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. She clutched her belly, fear gripping her heart. The baby wasn't due yet, but her body was telling her something was definitely wrong. When she finally reached home, she sank onto the bed, tears streaming down her face. She felt alone, abandoned and unsure of what lay ahead. Little did she know the lies Obiora had so carefully constructed were about to unravel in ways neither of them could have imagined. By Ifechukwu's ninth month, her pregnancy had reached its most critical stage. The cramped one-room apartment felt like a prison, and the constant strain of managing her life with minimal resources weighed heavily on her. Her once bright eyes now carried a shadow of exhaustion, and her small frame seemed to struggle under the weight of her unborn child. One morning, as Ifechukwu tried to prepare breakfast, she felt a wave of dizziness. She gripped the edge of the table for support, her other hand instinctively cradling her swollen belly. Obiora, she called weakly. Obiora, lounging on their old wooden chair, barely glanced up from his phone. What is it now, Ifechukwu? I'm trying to respond to an important message. I think we need to go to the hospital, she whispered, her voice trembling. Something doesn't feel right. Obiora frowned. You always say that. How many times have I told you that there's nothing wrong, eh? Women have been giving birth naturally for centuries. Stop overthinking things. You'll be fine. Ifechukwu clutched her belly, tears pooling in her eyes. But I'm not feeling fine. I'm not feeling fine. No buts, Obiora snapped, cutting her off. Do you have any idea how much hospitals charge these days? We don't have that kind of money to waste. Just rest. Go and sleep. Everything will be fine. Ifechukwu nodded silently, her heart sinking. She wanted to argue, to tell him how scared she was, but she knew it wouldn't matter. Obiora had made up his mind. Later that night, as Ifechukwu lay in bed, sharp pains ripped through her body. She bit her lip to keep from crying out, not wanting to disturb her husband. But as the hours passed, the pain became even more unbearable. Obiora, she finally screamed, clutching her stomach. It's time! The baby is coming! Obiora sprang up, startled. Are you sure? Yes, she cried, her face contorted in pain. Please, we need to go now. Reluctantly, Obiora put a call across to a friend who bought a car. The drive to the hospital was tense, with her groaning in the back seat and Obiora muttering under his breath about timing and money. At the hospital, the doctor examined Ifechukwu and delivered his verdict. She needs an emergency cesarean section. The baby's position isn't right and natural birth could endanger both mother and child. Obiora's face hardened. How much will it cost? The doctor hesitated. Approximately 400,000 naira. 400,000 naira? Obiora exclaimed, his voice rising. That's ridiculous. Isn't there another way? Can't she just push? Mr. Obiora, the doctor said firmly, this isn't about money. It's about saving your wife and baby. If she tries to deliver naturally, the risks are severe. She could bleed excessively or worse. Obiora clenched his fists, his mind racing. 400,000 naira was a small fraction of what he had spent on Lucy's new car. But here, standing before the doctor, he acted as though it was an insurmountable fortune. Let me think about it, he said coldly, turning away. Ifechukwu, lying on the hospital bed and writhing in pain, heard every word. Her heart broke into 1,000 pieces. Obiora, she whispered weakly, tears streaming down her face. Please, don't let me die. Obiora avoided her gaze. You'll be fine, Ifechukwu. You're strong. You can do this naturally. With time, you'll be able to have the strength to push, okay? The doctor sighed in frustration. Would give her some time, but I urge you to reconsider. As the hours dragged on, Ifechukwu's condition worsened. Her screams echoed through the hospital corridors, yet Obiora remained unmoved. Ifechukwu's life hung by a thread, and all she could think about was the betrayal of the man she had loved so deeply. In the end, the medical team had no choice but to act. The doctor, realizing Obiora wouldn't budge, performed the cesarean section without waiting for further approval. The surgery was a success. A healthy baby boy was born. But Ifechukwu had lost a dangerous amount of blood and lay unconscious for hours. When she finally woke up, weak and frail, the first thing she saw was her baby sleeping peacefully in a crib nearby. A wave of relief washed over her, but it was quickly replaced by the anger and heartbreak she saw when she looked at Obiora sitting by the window, scrolling through his phone as if nothing had happened. You nearly let me die, she said, her voice hoarse but steady. Obiora looked up, startled by the accusation. Ha! What are you talking about? You are alive, aren't you? And the baby is fine, so why are you complaining? Ifechukwu stared at him, her tears falling silently. At that moment, something inside her shifted. The love and trust she had for Obiora began to dissolve, replaced by a growing sense of betrayal. As the days passed, Ifechukwu's recovery was slow, and Obiora's neglect became even more apparent. He refused to pay the hospital bills, leaving Ifechukwu, who begged friends and relatives who put money together to get her out. When they finally returned home, Ifechukwu realized that the man she thought she knew was a total stranger, a selfish, deceitful stranger. But Obiora's secrets were closer to unraveling than he realized. And Ifechukwu was about to uncover the truth that would change everything. Ifechukwu returned home with her newborn son cradled in her arms, but the once flickering hope in her heart had turned to ashes. Their cramped one-room apartment felt even smaller now, suffocating her with its damp walls and creaking furniture. Despite the holding of her baby, she couldn't shake the memory of Obiora's cold indifference during her most vulnerable moments. Life after childbirth became even harder. Obiora's rationing grew stricter. Ifechukwu, do you know how expensive food is? Especially baby food, he barked one evening. You have to make do with pap oh. We can't afford buying imported milk for babies right now. Ifechukwu swallowed her frustration, focusing on her son's needs, but each passing day brought more questions she could no longer ignore. Where was the money Obiora claimed to be saving? How could a man who worked so hard have so little to show for it? Her suspicions began to grow when she visited Obiora's supposed uncle's shop one afternoon. She had gone to plead with the uncle to pay Obiora more so they could afford baby essentials. She didn't meet Obiora, So she called the staff there. To her surprise, the staff treated her with unusual respect, calling her Madam. Madam, welcome, a young shop assistant said, rushing to clear a seat for her. Ifechukwu blinked and confused. I'm here to see the owner of the shop, Obiora's uncle. The assistant exchanged a puzzled look with another worker. Owner. But isn't the owner your husband? Ifechukwu froze. What did you just say? Ah, Mr. Obiora owns this shop now. He even owns the next two shops close to it. You just had a baby boy, right? For some time he had not been coming frequently. Ifechukwu was stunned. His heart raced as the pieces began to fall into place. The uncle was a lie. This wasn't a struggling family business, it was Obiora's thriving empire. Feigning calm, she left the shop, her mind swelling with questions.